Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We are back here today as we have entered the month of February. In golf, they refer to the Saturday of a tournament to be moving day. Well, in college basketball, February might as well be moving month, where teams really start to separate themselves as it pertains to the conference championship races in the regular season. And you really start to get some clarity on bubble teams and where teams might be seeded in the NCAA tournament. Obviously it's not the end, that's March, but a lot goes on here in February, and Purdue got off to a great start. Got a pair of wins this week, taking down Minnesota and Michigan, but the challenges only get bigger this week as Purdue prepares for its biggest game to this date, and certainly a very challenging stretch thanks to some schedule shuffling. But we will break down everything today. From the 2 wins this past week, we'll preview the week that's to come. We'll have a special guest on to talk about the Illini side of things ahead of Tuesday night showdown. But first, as always, give the show a follow on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. We are there all the time talking Purdue, talking Big Ten, talking college hoops, college football in general. Always look forward to the conversations there. And hey, be sure to subscribe to Boilers and Beyond wherever you get your podcasts. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. And hey, it's February 6th right now as I'm recording this. We have a sprint to the finish here. Lots to talk about here on the podcast, so you don't want to miss a single episode as basketball season keeps going. Not going to be a shortage of topics to talk about. But, this past week, Purdue heads up to Minnesota. They get a 88-73 win that, Purdue really was comfortable in the whole game, I think. Minnesota went on a little mini run towards the end, but it really wasn't much of a threat. Purdue handled it pretty well. And then they come home after what was a bizarre travel week for Purdue. If you're not from the area here, West Lafayette, Indiana as a whole got just hammered with snow this week. Had about 13, 14 inches here in Lafayette, I think. So the team stays in Minneapolis after the game Wednesday, then flies into Indianapolis on Thursday because they couldn't fly back into Lafayette, has to stay in Indianapolis Thursday night because 65 was too bad going north. So, they didn't get back to campus until Friday, turn around, play Michigan on Saturday, and they get the win, 82-76, in a game where Michigan played pretty well, at least from my perspective, but Purdue was able to hold on for another win. That sets up Tuesday night showdown with Illinois. But to put a cap on this past week, you just have to at least be impressed with how Purdue came out strong against Michigan after a lousy week of travel. Sometimes that just puts teams to rest. Purdue was up 20-8 early on, I think. They got off to a good start, so there was no fatigue there. That was a good job by Purdue to be up and ready to go. It's wild. In that Michigan game, we saw this especially, although I would say the same happened in Minnesota. Jaden Ivey's just getting better before our eyes, especially as he goes to the rim. I think he's under control better right now than at times he used to be. I know in the post-game press conference, some of the players referenced Jaden Ivey going up off 2 feet rather than 1 foot, and he's so much more in control that way. And we really saw a lot of that going up off of 2 feet against Minnesota. He did a really nice job there with that, and I think the same happened against Michigan. Granted, he went up off 1 feet some too. There were a few times where he tried to bring the house down with some dunks, but man, it's crazy how much better he's getting. All of the NBA love is starting to come in now. I see him as a top 5 pick in a lot of these mock drafts. I can see it. I mean, the guy has everything you want. He can shoot it from outside. He can handle the ball pretty well. He can get to the rack with the best of them. He's a pretty good passer. He has all the tools to be a good defender. I don't think he's a great defender in college right now, but he has all the tools to be. And you know what really makes him even more effective in this Purdue offense is the personnel that's around him. You know, when he goes to the basket, he always has an elite big man there, so that if help comes from the opposing team's 5, he should have the big man to pass it off to. If a player on the outside comes in to help as Ivy penetrates, you know, you have to be careful, because if you overhelp, you are leaving Mason Gillis. You're leaving Sasha Stefanovic. You can't leave those two. Eric Hunter, Isaiah Thompson, I don't know that you really want to leave them either. So it's a tough situation for other teams. And you saw it a lot against Michigan especially, where Jaden Ivey would get some space between him and his man and just go. With reckless abandon, he would go to the rack, and it worked out really well for him. He didn't have a great shooting game against Michigan by any means. I think he was 0 for 6 from 3, but he still put up 23 points. He was fantastic at the free throw line. Really good stuff there. He's been incredible this year. So much fun to watch. I thought Travion Williams did a really nice job bouncing back against Michigan. And I don't know that bouncing back is necessarily the best way to put it, because he helped Purdue put that Minnesota game to rest late. Early on against Minnesota, I thought Williams really struggled. You know, the announcers, I can't remember who was on that game now, but, you know, they really referenced the fact that Williams was getting frustrated, losing some composure. I think he picked up 2 offensive fouls that were both clear examples of that. But he did a nice job to put to rest a slower start, and did a really nice job late in that game getting a few buckets. I think he had a few assists late that really helped Purdue put to rest Minnesota, put that game out of reach, not let anything crazy happen at the barn. If you're a Purdue fan, you could not be happier. You went up to the barn. If you're one who cares about this, Purdue covered the spread, and Purdue got out of there clean. Some of the craziness that's happened up there, the heartbreak that's happened up there, Purdue's able to avoid this time around. So that was great. And then Williams was excellent against Michigan. He did an excellent job on the offensive end. He is, you know, he hasn't been the most consistent there of late. I know he had a little bit of an injury at one point on a wrist that he referenced. That doesn't help, but, you know, 19 points on 7 of 8 from the field. 19 points on 8 field goals. That's pretty dang efficient. It doesn't get better than that. So, you know, a really good game from Williams there. And he did a nice job on the defensive end, too. We'll get to that here in a minute. You can't say enough either about up at Minnesota what Eric Hunter Jr. did. 20 points for him in that game. Incredibly efficient for him there. You know, when he's playing well, I think it raises Purdue's ceiling. And I don't know, you know, he's not going to be a go-to scoring option. You know, he is the 4th or 5th scoring option in that starting lineup. But, you know, when he's able to create a little bit off the dribble, he has a great mid-range game. That was one of the things that stood out so much when he led Purdue in scoring as a sophomore, scoring 12 points a game. Had a nice mid-range game. He's gotten to the rim well lately. He's been playing really well, and you will take all of that you can get. He's a good defender. I think you'd like to see more of that from him. You'd like to see him really have a dominant performance to shut someone pretty good down. But, regardless, he's been very good lately. And that's not a slight on Isaiah Thompson. He's had a really nice season, I think. But Eric Hunter just raises that ceiling a little bit. Just with his athleticism, his experience certainly helps. And he's just a little more versatile of a scorer than Thompson is. Both guys, though, can help you a lot. And we've seen it quite a bit lately. On that, let's not forget that, Isaiah Thompson's 3 games removed from being Purdue's leading scorer up at Iowa. This team has so many weapons on offense that pretty difficult to stop. That's why they're the number 1 offensive efficiency team in America. One of the big takeaways for a lot of folks from this Michigan game is, Purdue had a couple turnovers against the press, and that always is going to cause some panic. I don't know that Purdue's exactly designed to be a great press break team. They're not a great dribbling team. I think Eric Hunter, Isaiah Thompson are fine there. Jaden Ivey can certainly dribble. Stefanovic and Morton are okay. But it's not a great dribbling team. So that doesn't help. I will say, Michigan got away with a lot of contact on the presses, especially when they would meet Purdue around the half-court line with a trap. There were a few times where Eric Hunter was fouled and it was called. There was a time or two he was fouled and it wasn't called. There was a 10-second count that seemed really quick. There was another one of those recently, too. It might have been the Iowa game, I think there was one. A couple of 10-second counts have gone against Purdue recently that were really quick 10s. So be it. I don't know that Purdue was awful against the press. And, Matt Painter kind of brought up that with the craziness of their travel, they didn't have a ton of time to practice against it. And their adjustment when they started putting Sasha Stefanovic in the backcourt to set screens, that helped a lot. I think once that adjustment was made, I don't know that Michigan forced any more turnovers, and it wasn't long after that Michigan just stopped pressing altogether. So you just kind of have to take things for what they're worth. One thing that I think was really significant and really good from this week, turnovers. It's been a problem for Purdue all year. This team is too good on offense to turn the ball over. And by that, I mean this team is too dangerous. You have too many scoring weapons. You're the number 1 most efficient offense in America. When you turn the ball over, when you're that efficient, you're just leaving so many points out there. Only 9 turnovers at Minnesota, 7 against Michigan. Anytime you're under 10, I think that's a pretty good game. Purdue's had some games around the 15 mark this year. In theory, when you go from 15 turnovers to 9, there's 6 more possessions. If you're shooting 50%, there's at least 6 more points. That's assuming none of them are threes. That's pretty valuable. That can be the difference between winning and losing right there. 7 against Michigan was great, especially when you consider that you did have a couple turnovers against Michigan's press. Now, they're not a great defensive team. They have a lot of highly rated recruits that are not great college basketball players. Maybe they'll be good NBA players. I don't know, but Caleb Houston, Moussa Diabate didn't do a whole lot in this game. Dickinson was obviously fantastic, but Purdue's just got to maximize every possession. And when you get more scoring opportunities for this team, you're going to score, and when you miss shots, you're pretty good on the offensive glass. So you're just taking points away from yourself when you turn the ball over. That's obviously pretty dumbed down, but especially with this team, with how efficient they are on offense, you can't just throw points away. On the defensive end, there's certainly still some room for improvement. Up at the barn, Jamison Battle, Peyton Willis hit some really tough shots in this one. Now, there were plenty of open looks for Minnesota as well. It's a fairly poor three-point shooting team that shot 50% from three against Purdue. Some of that was them making some tough shots. Some of them were pretty open. Purdue tries to keep teams out of the paint, make them shoot from outside. It burns you at times, but you'll live with that, especially against Minnesota. Battle and Willis are solid players. They don't have much else. I mean, you saw in that game how they tried to approach the center position. They started the backup, the Charlie Daniels kid, and he picks up 3 fouls in the first 4 minutes. And then Eric Curry really didn't do a whole lot. So they're limited. They hit a lot of tough shots to keep that game as close as it was. And that was a 15-point win for Purdue where they covered the spread. So hard to be too upset there. And, in that Michigan game, Hunter Dickinson exposed a weakness of Purdue. Zach Edey's mobility is something that teams can exploit. He's not quick. He is going to really struggle to guard a 5 that can knock down threes, and Hunter Dickinson did that. It was all off ball screens. I mean, Edey just can't come that far off, that far out and play and still be able to, defend the rim. He just doesn't move well enough for that. It was interesting that, when Travion Williams was on the floor, he did a really nice job of taking that away a little bit. I think the vast majority of Dickinson's jump shots came with Edey on the floor. So, that's a massive plus for Purdue. Williams is your better defender there in those situations, but, Edey's also a rim protector that you are going to be pretty tough to find someone who is physically imposing down by the rim as Zach Edey is. But, that was a fun matchup to watch. And, I always love the good recruiting stories. And, Hunter Dickinson against Zach Edey is another one of those. Hunter Dickinson cuts Purdue from his list back in, what would that have been, like September of 2019? And then Purdue goes out and offers Zach Edey. I don't think anyone, when that happened, could have imagined Zach Edey's career going this well, to the point where, losing Dickinson certainly wasn't a devastating recruiting loss for Purdue, although the guy's a heck of a player. There's no doubt about that. Saw a few milestones this week. Those are always fun to recognize. 400 career wins for Matt Painter, 25 of those at Southern Illinois, 375 at Purdue. He should hit 400 wins at Purdue alone next season. You just can't overstate how lucky Purdue got to go from Gene Cady to Matt Painter back in 2005. And that was a hire that was anything but safe. Hiring a coach with 1 year of head coaching experience, a head coach in his 30s. God, what was Painter? 35, 36. He was young. Purdue absolutely knocked that out of the park. It also led to, I think, the internal replacement for Joe Tiller that didn't go as well. But, hey, a lot of good stuff has happened to Purdue under Matt Painter, and I think the future is plenty bright. 200 career three-pointers for Sasha Stefanovic. Hey, if you missed last week's episode, we have a good segment in there talking about Stefanovic, looking back at 2017, when he was recruited to Purdue, looking back at how all of that unfolded. Pretty remarkable how all of that worked in Purdue's favor. He is such an underrated part of this team. I will never, ever think he gets enough credit for how good he is. And then 1,000 all-time Big Ten wins for Purdue. They're the first team to get this far. It's a cool stat. It shows the strength of the Purdue program historically. It doesn't really mean much. So many of those wins came so long ago, but nonetheless, it's a cool stat. And look, I know so much of the conversation around this team is going to be focused on what happens in the NCAA tournament. And that's justified. Purdue fans are as hungry for NCAA tournament success as anybody. But look, you're 20-3 right now. Enjoy it. This is a fun season. This is a fun team. You're in a great spot at 20-3. You probably will be number 3 in the country when the new poll comes out tomorrow. So enjoy it. Try to not overthink about the NCAA tournament yet. Let that be a March thing. Just enjoy what's going on right now because this Purdue team is a lot of fun. Looking at the Big Ten too, you'd love to get a Big Ten regular season title. Purdue and Illinois are by far the 2 best teams in this league. We saw, Wisconsin was tied for the lead with Illinois going into last week. Illinois steamrolled them on Wednesday. And then Wisconsin struggled badly with Penn State, needed a late shot to win by 2 there. Look, I said it last week. I know Wisconsin beat Purdue, and it's always tough to say this about a team that defeated the program that this podcast is about. It sounds bitter in defeat, but I don't know how good Wisconsin actually is. I think Johnny Davis was really hot for a while. And I think they play at a pace where they're difficult to really stretch out from. But I don't know how great they are. Davis is cooling off a little bit. That's a red flag for them. They need him to be, the 20-plus point a game scorer that he has been for most of this year for them to have a chance to compete in the Big Ten. And then Michigan State gets blown out at Rutgers on Saturday. Of course, that Rutgers win always helps Purdue in some regard. Michigan State's good. They're not a great offensive team. They're good. Don't get me wrong. Going to Breslin is always going to be difficult. Purdue will go up there in a few weeks, but I don't know that they can hang with Purdue and Illinois here in this Big Ten race. I'll be really surprised if anyone outside of those 2 gets a share of the Big Ten even, especially, how this Purdue-Illinois game goes is going to go a long way there. You're looking at 7 teams in the NCAA tournament right now, according to Lunardi. That is Purdue, Illinois, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Iowa, Indiana. I think out of that group right now, Iowa is your biggest question mark. I'm recording this Sunday afternoon to get it out of the way. They play Minnesota here in about an hour. That is certainly a must-win. I don't think Iowa should struggle there, but that is one that they absolutely have to win to continue to feel good about their NCAA tournament chances, especially after they just lost to Penn State in double overtime last Monday. Looking at this week ahead, of course, the headline game probably in all of college basketball this week. Tuesday, 9 p.m., Illinois at Purdue. It is certainly the game of the year so far in the Big Ten, second to only the first time these 2 teams played. This is going to go a long way in deciding the Big Ten champion. If Illinois wins, they have a 2-game lead over Purdue in the Big Ten race, and the ball's in their court at that point to find a way to lose it, because that would be a massive, massive advantage as we're in the second half of Big Ten play. And if Purdue can win this, they would be tied with Illinois in the Big Ten, and they would have the tiebreaker as it pertains to Big Ten tournament seeding. Remember, there's no tiebreaker for the regular season. If you're tied for the lead, you're a conference champion. So that's what you're looking at here. The first game was an instant classic. No reason to think this is going to be any different. 2 things from that first game that are very significant in my mind. Number 1 was obviously Kofi Coburn's foul trouble. Zach Edey got him in foul trouble early. Coburn committed a few fouls in the second half out of frustration. That really helped Purdue. He picked up his third foul. He was laughing, pumping up the crowd, and then he picked up his fourth foul. That's Illinois basketball. We'll see if that happens again. If Purdue can get him in foul trouble again, you put Omar Payne out there, who is a serious composure risk, or they go small again, which Purdue struggled with last time, but they have a little bit more experience defending that now. Number two, Purdue really didn't prepare a whole lot for Andre Curbelo. When he played against Purdue the last time, that was his first game in 2 months, and he played an incredible game to keep Illinois in that and ultimately get it to overtime. This time, Purdue will be prepared for Curbelo. Purdue will know better how to defend the ball screens with Curbelo. He's not a great three-point shooter. I say that, and he will probably knock down a few threes on Tuesday because of that, but having a little bit more reason to prepare for him is going to help Purdue. You love having your two big guys to counter Illinois' one. Two is better than one always in this situation. We'll see how that goes. Edey played really well last time. Williams didn't necessarily, but he helped Purdue close out that game with some great passes to Eric Hunter Jr. late. Illinois did a good job on Ivey last time around. He's only 3 for 10 from the field, but he got 15 foul shots. He made 13 of them. That certainly, you don't want to send him to the line that much, but you want to make him earn things. Illinois is going to shoot a lot of threes. That's how they play. I had a question on Twitter, who is the key for Purdue in this? And I think it's hard to go with anyone besides Jaden Ivey because he's the outlier here. Both teams have good three-point shooting. Trent Frazier, Alfonso Plummer, DeMonte Williams, Jacob Grandison, they can all knock down shots for Illinois. Luke Goody can knock down shots. For Purdue, Sasha Stefanovic knocks down shots. Jaden Ivey can shoot from outside. Hunter and Thompson can shoot. Gillis can shoot. Both teams have shooting. Both teams have all Big Ten caliber big men. Illinois has an All-American big man. That both teams have that. But Jaden Ivey is the most dynamic player in this game because he can put the ball on the ground and go to the basket. That's something that Illinois doesn't have the same ability as what Jaden Ivey does. So he's the guy that separates you a little bit. We'll have more on this game here momentarily. 48 hours later, Purdue goes up to Michigan, goes up to Ann Arbor, 9 p.m. tip-off on Thursday. Absolutely brutal break in the rescheduling because of Michigan's COVID breakout. 48 hours after the biggest game of the year, Purdue hits the road to play a team for the second time in less than a week. A positive for Purdue is that I think Michigan played pretty well on Saturday, and Purdue still won, not going away, but Purdue led the whole game. Purdue was only 5 of 18 from 3. Michigan was 8 of 18. Percentage-wise, those are outliers on both sides. Purdue was low, Michigan was high. You like that. The officiating as Purdue plays Michigan the second time is going to be fascinating because Dickinson didn't get in foul trouble against Purdue the first time around. And I was trying to think before this game, has anyone not had their center pick up 2 fouls in the first half against Purdue all year? Michigan didn't. Dickinson only had 1. I think he finished with 4, but he was never really in much foul trouble. That's going to be a key. If he's in foul trouble, Michigan's in serious danger because he's the guy that can take over a game. He pretty much did on Saturday, and it still wasn't enough. If Purdue can go 2-0 on Tuesday and Thursday, that is jaw-dropping, impressive stuff. I think if Purdue can beat Illinois, you have to really worry about focus after a massive win playing less than 48 hours later. If they lose to Illinois, I think the hope would be that they come out on fire, ready to get back from that loss and bounce back with a win. Then Sunday, you don't get a break. Maryland comes to town for a 1 p.m. tip-off, a CBS game before the Super Bowl action for you. Maryland's a bit of a mess since they fired Turgeon back in early December. They have some talented players, Eric Ayala, Fats Russell, Qudus Wahab. They're not bad players, but this team has zero fight to them. They just get blown out of games. Saw it a couple weeks ago when Indiana just took it to them at the Xfinity Center. Danny Manning isn't a great coach. I mean, he just got fired at Wake Forest for really struggling, and he's their head guy now. But at the same time, Purdue will be on their fourth game in just over a week. So nothing's going to come easy there. You just kind of have to hope for the best for Purdue. They have the serious advantage there. But Maryland may be ready. This is still a Maryland team that beat Illinois. Granted, Illinois didn't have Kofi Coburn or Andre Curbelo in that game, I don't think. But they still beat Illinois. So they have capabilities to them. It's a heck of a week Purdue has in front of it. It all starts with Illinois. Previewing that game a little more, bringing on a special guest here, Evan Hindrichs. He is as big of an Illinois fan as you are going to find. The guy lives for the Illini. So let's hear some of his perspective ahead of this game, and then after that, we will close this out with a few thoughts, as always. All right, we've got Evan here to talk about the upcoming game, Purdue and Illinois, Tuesday night in Mackey Arena. Evan, thanks for joining us today. The Illini have been playing well lately since that last Purdue game. Talk a little bit about what they've been doing well of late.
I think it's mostly been their defense and their guard play. I mean, you look at a game like Michigan State where it wasn't the reason although the reason you won the game was because you had guys like Trent Frazier, DeMonte, and on the big side, like even Omar Payne is a solid defensive option. And as far as, and then you look at games like Wisconsin where when they had Kofi back, when they got Kofi back, and you could see that had a huge impact because, frankly, I would say that 90% of bigs in college basketball are just flat out not strong enough to guard Kofi Coburn, and I think so much of what Illinois do relies on his success that's how the attention he attracts is so great that he creates open looks for his teammates. Which leads to a lot of threes. That's what happened in the Wisconsin game. And in the Indiana game, Indiana really lost the game on just pure foul trouble. Like, they got in foul trouble, and they got in foul trouble quick because Michael Durr was doing a good job of not letting Kofi catch the ball close to the basket, because once you do that, it is pretty much curtains for you. He was doing a good job of that, but he got in foul trouble quick. And then Trace Jackson Davis has improved defensively, but I wouldn't. But Kofi's just nuts. And as far as the defense, you have guys like Trent and DeMonte, where Trent's defensive positioning and recovery is amazing. Like, I think I've heard many coaches in post-game press conferences and you can see it when you're watching the games. Like, I believe it was Matt Painter who said, like, we run more plays than the Dallas Cowboys, and he knew them all.
Yeah.
That's just the type of player he is. Demonte is going to be the guy who's just a solid defensive player, gets a bunch of rebounds, and then you have guys, and then Kofi against most players is pretty defensively solid also.
Yeah.
I would argue that especially in the Michigan State game, when you didn't have two of your best players, that defense is what won them the game, even though their defense wasn't perfect in that game. And as for the others, it was pretty commonplace if you watched Illinois basketball.
Yeah, that defense is impressive. And, one thing I noticed when Purdue and Illinois played the first time, Andre Curbelo single-handedly kept Illinois in that game and took Purdue to the brink. Talk a little bit about Curbelo and the impact he's had since he came back from that injury.
Well, yeah, he breaks down a defense. So, and there are a lot of times where our offense would get completely stagnant, and it would end in we'd like move the ball, but we weren't moving anybody. So it was pretty painful to watch Frazier and Plummer just chuck up threes. What Curbelo does, he breaks down a defense, and his vision is ridiculous. He moves the ball and he moves bodies. So that creates open looks for guys like Frazier or and Plummer to hope, and Grandison to make.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Illinois and Purdue are so similarly constructed because they have elite play inside and a whole lot of shooters around them. Last time Purdue and Illinois played, Purdue got the best of Kofi Cockburn a little bit. How do you think that's going to play out in the game on Tuesday?
That concerns me, because when I said that Kofi is able to get the better of 90% of the bigs in college basketball, Zach Edey might be in that 10%, because he does fit the he's just as big and just as strong, and I would even venture to say he's a little bigger than Kofi is, but he's able to, and offensively, he's got great touch for a guy that size. Like, not many big guys like that know how to use their body quite like he does. He knows how to use his frame to his advantage, and when guys like that figure it out, it's I mean, good luck to the rest of college basketball. It's just,
yeah,
he's concerning. I'm hoping that when on Tuesday that sorry, were you gonna?
No, you're all good.
I'm hoping on Tuesday that Kofi and Edey will kind of, at the very least, kind of cancel each other out in terms of their effect on the game. So that, because I don't think in a lot of ways, much like Illinois, your offense, though it is amazingly run, and you could argue it is mostly run through Travion Williams, I don't think it works quite the same if Edey doesn't dominate his opposition in the post.
No, I agree. And that's certainly something Purdue, has a luxury with two great big guys there. The last time Purdue and Illinois met, great game. I mean, an instant classic, double overtime. What needs to change for Illinois if they want to flip the result this time as they go to Mackey Arena?
Well, you've got the hard part about Purdue is they run so much action that you have to be so disciplined in the way you defend, and also realize that when Travion Williams gets the ball in the post, he's looking for a back cut. Like his first instinct is pass. He's not. If Travion Williams is the one shooting, then you pat your guys on the back, say good job. If you look at the rest of the team around them, and you're like, do I really want Sasha Stefanovic coming off curl screens and chucking threes all night? No, not really. Do I really want Jaden Ivey getting downhill? No, not really. You've got to find a way to watch for back. Do not give them as few easy baskets as possible, and that is very difficult to do against Purdue because their offense is it's got so many moving parts, and when a machine has so many moving parts and it's efficient, then it's quite a scary sight. And I think I think Illinois have to be as disciplined as you can possibly be. Don't give up as many back cuts, and maybe most important, try to mitigate Zach Edey, and probably the most important, which I think they can do, keep Jaden Ivey from going downhill. I'll live with Jaden Ivey shooting. I will happily take Jaden Ivey shooting. I do not want him running full steam towards the basket. That is a great way to get me.
Yeah, he's pretty special. So with all that, can Illinois put it together? Prediction time. Is Illinois going to do it?
I think they can. I think they certainly have to shoot better than they did in the first game. And I think, like I said, you have to be so you worked hard defending against Purdue, because I can imagine watching them play how mentally taxing it is to chase Sasha Stefanovic around for however many minutes. And like it's just, you've got to make your shots when the opportunity is presented to you. Kofi needs to assert some type of dominance on either end, and maybe even if worse comes to worse, then maybe a guy like Benjamin Boston's Verdonk plays better against.
Yeah, he had some good minutes in that first game.
Yeah, he did. You're hoping that he doesn't provide much offensively, but I would say that he was one of the best things to come out of that game, out of that first game, because he provided a defense that nobody else really was. And I think it's going to be the game. I think it's going to be the game of the year in the Big Ten. It's going to be a heck of a battle. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if those two teams end up playing again in the Big Ten tournament at some point. No, I wouldn't either. I think that if you look at the Big Ten, and we've kind of established that, let's say, the 4 or 5 contending teams are like Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, Ohio State. I think Michigan State are great in so many other facets, but they don't have a guy who can just get them a bucket. And as far as Wisconsin, I feel like the exact opposite. But I think it's pretty clear at this point of the season who the best teams are, and I think it'll be really tough for Illinois to play the game that they need to, because like you're gonna have to be not perfect to beat Purdue, but you're gonna have to find ways to hang with them, and even you're just gonna have to find ways to play. You're gonna have to compile your best performance of the season, most likely to beat Purdue, because I think it's pretty clear that they are your main opposition for the Big Ten title.
I agree. Evan, I appreciate you coming on. It's going to be a great game on Thursday, and we will talk to you again sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Evan for joining the show today. Always a good time. Going to be a heck of a game on Tuesday night. Mackey Arena is going to be on fire. I can't wait to be there for that. But hey, as always, a few final thoughts here to close this podcast out. You know, it's really getting to be bracketology time where, Lenardi's tweeting out updates every day. Things are looking good for Purdue right now. But one noteworthy thing, Purdue's non-conference schedule really is not doing it any favors right now. North Carolina was ranked 18th when Purdue played them back in November. They're now 16-7. Not awful. 0-7 in quad 1. So they are 16-7 with no really great wins. They're a bubble team at best right now. Duke just ran them out of their own gym on Saturday. They're struggling. Villanova was ranked 5th when Purdue rallied late in that second half to beat them. Now they're 12th, and Colin Gillespie just got hurt. Not sure how serious that is yet. You obviously hope for the best for him. He's a great player. He's their best player. Great kid. But, that's not great. Florida State, 13-9 on the outside looking in to the bubble. They're probably not going to make the tournament. NC State, 10-14. They're not good. Butler, 11-12 overall, 4-8 in the Big East. They're not good. On paper, before the season, this wasn't a bad non-conference schedule. UNC, Villanova, or Tennessee, Florida State, they're always decent. Thought Butler was going to be better than they were. LaVall Jordan got in the way there. So, on the bright side, Purdue won all these games, but it's not a great representative for Purdue's strength of schedule ratings. You're starting to see that now that those numbers are getting posted more. If you're trying to fill out an all Big Ten first-team ballot this year, good luck. There are a lot of really good players in this league, and Purdue's seen it now. How do you fill out this? There's so many good big men, especially. If I were filling out a ballot as of right now, and we will have a final Boilers and Beyond all Big Ten team, I will make sure of that. But as of right now, I think you're probably looking, from my perspective, Johnny Davis, Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray, EJ Liddell, Kofi Coburn. That would probably be my 5 right now. There are many other guys in that conversation, including Hunter Dickinson, that's for sure, including Zach Edey, that's probably for sure. So Trace Jackson Davis comes to mind. Plenty of guys who are deserving to be in that conversation. And then On the football side, Jeff Brom filled out his coaching staff now, per a report from Golden Black from Tom Dienhart. I haven't really had a lot of time to look into this, but I do know this. It's a blend of experienced coaches with some young guys that you really hope are going to be good on the recruiting trail, which is always so important. Once basketball ends, I'm always hungry for content over the summer, so we'll do an episode over the summer looking at all these guys and looking at the staff as a whole, take a deeper look. But for now, that staff is finalized. It looks like Ron English will end up being the play caller. Jeff Brom hasn't spoken on that as of yet, but spring practice starts here at the end of the month. Hopefully the spring game is open to the public this year. Hasn't been the last 2 years. Would really like to get out there and see that. So if anyone from the football staff is listening, make the spring game open to the public. I'd love to come by Ross 8 and check it out. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me. We will be back next week. Plenty to break down, plenty to preview. The Big Ten is all gas, no brakes, folks. If you haven't, follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Join the conversation there. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss any more content here. Until next week, enjoy a great week of basketball, and hopefully the snow starts to melt a little bit.